Reimagine. That's what we do, and we must do it. We must do it. We must do it. We have this incredible power and capacity to reimagine who we are, what we are, and what the world is, and all of that around this experience of life. So I want you to imagine, can you turn off the snares on your drum real quick? Thanks. I want you to imagine you're at an airport and you see a traveler walking towards you. You see someone. I'm an epic traveler. I don't underpack. I overpack. I'm a member of Overpackers Anonymous. Keep coming back, it doesn't work. And because I like choices. I like choices. So in this moment, I'm going to be every man, every woman, and you see someone coming towards you, and it can be me or someone else. And every 10 feet, I stopped and I set everything down, or that person sets everything down. I rearrange, I sweat, no, I glimmer. I look at my bags, I look up, I look back at my bags. I'm exhausted. I have barely moved, and I'm already completely spent. Now, as you're watching, you're thinking to yourself, why would anybody travel with that much stuff? What would they do? What could possibly be in all of those bags? So, parallel universe, imagine just for a moment you can read the tags on all of this luggage. The first bag is labeled, things I know about everyone else. The second one says, reasons people are wrong. The third tag reads, people who need to change. And the heaviest one, the one that has like a broken wheel, is labeled, my opinions about everything. Suddenly it all makes sense, because the truth is, I think that many of us are traveling through life with exactly that much baggage. We're dragging it through our relationships, through our workplaces, through our family dinners, through our social media feeds, definitely there, through our prayers, through our meditation, into our Sunday mornings. And then we wonder why the spiritual journey feels so exhausting. So the title of my talk today is The Weight of Judgment. And just so you know, this isn't a message where I'm going to say it's time for you to just be nicer and be kind and stop judging people. I'm not going to say that. It's not a you can do better self-help talk about keeping your opinions to yourself. I'm truly not here to make you feel guilty about having thoughts, because they're the same ones I have. So, there's that. This is a message about consciousness. It is actually about reimagine. It's this idea about what judgment does, not just to the people we judge, but to the field in which we live and breathe and pray and play and create our lives. Ernest Holmes taught us that we live in a spiritual universe governed by law. And you've often heard me say here, we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual laws. But the thing is, we invoke our human side a lot. And that's not bad, but we invoke that place of limitation a lot. And that's what we project our judgments from, yeah? So what are we, if life is lived from consciousness, I want to ask, just think about, what are we feeding our consciousness, that thing that creates our lives? How are we nourishing it? What are we giving that consciousness? And if the answer is judgment, that constant, relentless, habitual judgment, then the next question is, what does judgment do to my consciousness? How does that affect my life? So judgment is heavy because it creates separation. It creates separation. At the absolute core of this teaching, at the core of most mystical traditions, once you peel back the theological wallpaper, is this radical, world-rearranging, self-rearranging idea. There is one life, one mind, one presence, one power. It operates in, as, and through everything that exists. Not most things, everything. Not just the people we like, everyone. Not just the beliefs that we agree with, but all expressions. Everything, 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 everyone, everyone. You, me, the person who stole your parking spot, the person whose politics make your eyes kind of go like that, the person who's been ghosting your texts and your calls. Everything is an expression of the one life, all of it. And the moment we enter into judgment, the moment we do that, we mentally exit the truth that everything is an expression of the one life. we set up a line. And basic physics, two things cannot occupy the same place at the same time. That includes ideas. That includes beliefs. When I judge another person, I am drawing an invisible line in my consciousness. On this side of the line, it's me. On the other side of the line, oh, it's you. Now, from my side of the line, I somehow have appointed myself like I'm qualified to assess value, worth, and more importantly, to issue a verdict on their soul, your soul. Apparently, that's my role as a judge, right? This is what judgment is. It is an act of separation. It is a declaration that the oneness, at least in this particular moment, about this particular person does not apply. And separation is always heavy, always heavy. Love expands, judgment contracts. Love opens doors, judgment locks people into categories. Love reveals possibility, judgment decides the verdict before the evidence is in. Now, Ernest Holmes was very clear about what happens when we hold a contracted consciousness. He taught that life cannot return to us what we have not first accepted, what we have not first held in consciousness, right? In other words, what we obtain, we sustain. And that's both a positive for the life-affirming ideas and for those ones that aren't so life-affirming. That which we obtain, we sustain. So this is how it can show up for me. If I habitually look at the world through a lens of criticism and limitation, if I have trained myself, and I have trained myself, I mean, I've been living on this planet as long as you have, if I've trained myself to scan every situation for what is wrong, who is wrong, and why they're wrong, then I have trained my consciousness to look for limitation. And since we have this thing called the one mind that flows in and as in all of us, again, remember what I said at the very beginning from Meister Eckhart, between God and me there is no between. That means, so since we have this thing called the one mind, that means I'm looking for limitation, not just in these other people, but in everyone, including me. Ta-da! The law is not personal. Spiritual law is not personal. It doesn't say, oh, I see this limitation searching is just directed outward. That's fine. That's all it is. It's just going outward. Spiritual law doesn't organize and sort by target. It just reflects the pattern that we have going on. So you might have heard a version of this particular idea. Judgment is like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to get indigestion or worse, right? So when I am in that mode of Sydney's righteous and holy judgment, I really want to believe that I'm describing someone else, but spiritual reality, the spiritual reality is that all judgment is self-judgment. Sorry about that. I don't make the rules. I just convey them. So I think our culture has made judgment a competitive sport, and we have turned judgment into entertainment, right? And this is not me getting partisan up here. This is a spiritual center, not Meet the Press. So let's be clear that this observation doesn't belong to any one political tribe. It's the water in which we are all swimming. Outrage has become currency. Attention is earned through ridicule. Followers are accumulated through contempt. Now, you may participate this a lot or a little, and maybe you don't at all, and man, I'm jealous then if you do that. But just be aware that this is the culture, the context in which we are living right now. So there's an algorithm. This metric has discovered something really profoundly unfortunate, and that's that anger is engaging. Mockery is clickable. Humiliation gets views. We have built an entire information ecosystem on the scaffolding of judgment. I like that word, scaffold. Kennedy would have liked that word, scaffold. Okay, I'm coming back. And the unspoken message that comes through every screen in our lives is this: if you want to rise, find somebody lower, or find a way to make somebody lower. If you want to feel important, find somebody to diminish. If you want applause, find somebody to attack. Now, I'm not saying this is how you and I function. It's all of those people out there, you know, the ones, yeah, we can judge them, okay, fine. And the insanity about this is that it works in the short term. We're talking, you know, dopamine hits, adrenal spikes, cortisol rising like a fountain, and voila, social media engagement and clicks go through the roof. So, everyone take a breath for a moment. Just like the song. Because spiritual consciousness moves and works in opposite polarity to all of that. To all of that. You don't become more by making someone else less. You don't increase your value by denying someone else's. There's enough for everybody. There's enough for everyone. And you don't ever rise by pushing someone down, putting someone down, or keeping someone down. This isn't power. This is insecurity masquerading as power. It's that projected outward thing. Okay. Real power expands. It includes, it doesn't need a villain to feel like a hero. And some of you remember that I have talked about the drama triangle from time to time. The drama triangle has a victim, a villain, and a hero. When you're a victim, you need a villain. You need to be able to blame someone. And then you need to be saved, or you have the belief that you have to be saved. Or there's a hero who wants to be a hero and will say, well, let's see, if I can find some victims or tell people that they're victims when they're really not, or we can find a villain, then we can define that. And now we've got this cycle going on. This is how politics works. All politics. You know, we send in the troops, send in the rescuer, send in the person who knows, well, I can fix this, I can fix this. Or we assign them that role. We say, well, this is the one who can do it. This is the one who can do it. And we outsource all of that, our capacity for knowing a higher truth about them, about everyone, and ourselves, right? We do this. We want to be rescued. Who doesn't? There's a fundamental operating principle on the internet. Blessed are the offended, for they shall have content. Collective outrage is a content strategy. And to the degree that we are invested, emotionally invested, we are paying for it not in clicks, but in consciousness. Because what we hold about others, we cultivate in ourselves. That's just the fundamental truth. So Ernest Holmes taught this, that spiritual law is impersonal. It doesn't check your intentions before it reflects your patterns. Oh my God. It doesn't check your intentions before it reflects your patterns. This is why we all need to be awake and aware and truly, authentically honest about what we are believing, what we are thinking. Not from a hateful thing of, oh my God, I'm so judgmental, but how about, oh man, I've been judging that. Interesting. So every time we rehearse criticism, every time we play the mental highlight reel of someone else's failures, every time we return to resentment like a dog trying to find a bone, we're not just commenting on reality, we are programming reality, our own. Ta-da! Every time we practice contempt, we strengthen the neural pathway of contempt. Every time we rehearse superiority, we reinforce the belief in hierarchy. And there's a lot of that in our world right now. And every time we run an internal commentary of condemnation, we are training our subjective mind, which cannot distinguish between what we're pointing at and what we're creating, right? So hear this, the subjective mind, that part of us that creates from our thoughts and beliefs, does not and cannot distinguish between what we are pointing at and what we want to create. The law just says, oh, we're practicing limitation today. Got it. And faithfully, impersonally, and lovingly, and I use that word lovingly deliberately, it lovingly multiplies the pattern because that's what the spiritual law of cause and effect does. It doesn't punish us, it mirrors us. It mirrors us. Life is this mirror, and we persistently project, what we persistently project eventually shapes what we experience. So think about it. What if every judgment that you hold, that I hold, is actually self-hypnosis? Think about that. What if every criticism is a rehearsal, not just a comment? And what if every condemnation is a training session, training our consciousness towards limitation? So when I grew up, I remember reading Winnie the Pooh and having it read to me. And there was always Eeyore. Y'all remember Eeyore? Oh my. So Eeyore, I've known Eeyores. Anybody known Eeyores? They're always complaining. And they spend decades perfecting the art of finding fault, right? And they're really good at it. The Eeyores I have known can walk into any room and within like 30 seconds identify what's wrong with it. They can meet any person and within just a couple of minutes catalog everything that person needs to fix. They're experts. I believe that Eeyores believe and live like the world is falling short of them, because it is. It's not because the world is actually worse or better, but Eeyores have trained their perception to find what is lacking. They are defeat-seeking missiles, and perception shapes experience, right? So we are not objective cameras recording what's out there. We are subjective interpreters and subjective breathing interpreters. We filter reality through the patterns we have built. And judgment, habitual practice, relentless judgment is one of the most powerful filters there is. Now, I know everyone in here has already cleansed their filters, and you guys are doing fine. So when you go home, you can tell everybody else about this. And that's that spiritual vision sees essence, not performance. And what we are here to do is move beyond that thing about performance into seeing the spiritual essence. We want to see spiritual essence. That is spiritual vision. We look beyond what is right in front of us to the truth that lies within. Many teachers in this particular movement talk a lot about a spiritual blueprint. And it is that pattern for perfection that exists within us. Now, we don't always live from that because many of us never knew that we had that, nor did we do anything to cultivate it, bring it forth, and make it stronger, right? We didn't know that was something that was there, which is why we have places like this. So practitioners like Mary Catherine and myself and so many others that we have can stand in wholehearted, authentic knowing, understanding, and seeing the truth about who you are. And they hold that consciousness until you can hold that consciousness. And now we've got several people holding it, and lo and behold, the world rises because we do this together. So you might be thinking, is Sydney just asking us to bury our heads and deny what's going on? No, not at all, not at all. I'm wanting us to learn how to discern. Discernment says this action has caused harm. This behavior crossed a line. This pattern is destructive. Discernment is about an action, and yet there's judgment. Discernment, judgment. Discernment can move you into action. Judgment can keep you held back. Judgment says this person is irredeemably that thing or that activity. Judgment freezes the verdict and closes the case. It reduces the whole of a human soul to their worst moment, their worst mistake, their worst belief. And if people had done that to me throughout my life, how horrible would that be? And when we do that to other people, how horrible are we holding this thing about, well, they're just like, that's who they are, instead of, well, that's who they are, right? There's a difference in the tone. One of the reasons I love this teaching is that we choose to correct and clarify our vision. We learn to see and we practice seeing, again, through spiritual vision, not through the collective vision, the human vision. So here's that principle again. Judgment is an attempt to freeze someone in the form they are currently demonstrating. Spiritual vision sees them in the light of what they can become. Spiritual vision sees us, all of us, in the light of what we can become, of what the truth is. Judgment is retrospective. It looks at what has been and says, that's the whole story. Spiritual vision is prospective. It looks at what spirit is capable of expressing and says, the story isn't over. Now, Jesus did this all the time. He saw fishermen and called them world changers. He saw a woman at a well and called her worthy of his deepest theological conversation. He saw a tax collector sitting in a tree, which is somehow ironically appropriate, and said, come on down, I'm coming to your house. And it wasn't to blame, but to talk, to love, to acknowledge, and to hear. The Buddha did it. He saw people suffering and knew he had to love them without limits. Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Baha'u'llah, Meister Eckhart, Brother Lawrence, Hildegard of Bingen. The list is endless. So Ernest Holmes taught this too. He had people coming into his office who were convinced they were broken, limited, sick, and stuck. So he held the vision of their wholeness with such conviction that the vision became the dominant reality. That's exactly what our practitioners do. That's exactly what our ministers do. That's exactly what this teaching is about. That we hold the true vision, the spiritual vision of who you are and what is possible with such dedication, conviction, and passion that it becomes the dominant reality. That includes finance, health, relationship, career, whatever it is, and peace in the world, by the way. The spiritual practice is that we don't pretend otherwise from what is going on in the world. We hold the higher vision and consciousness. And that vision creates space for a different expression, right? And the idea is, how can we move from being naive to being constructive and creative and healing? So raising and praising is a spiritual practice. I raise you, I praise you, all in the name of love. It's a practice we've done here. I raise you, I pray. Is that the right gesture? I praise you, all in the name of love. I raise you, I praise you, all in the name of love. So when we bless someone, really, really bless them, and not just like wishing them well in passing, what we are doing is calling forth a higher experience. When we genuinely acknowledge someone's courage, we invoke courage, whether we're seeing it or not. When we recognize someone's beauty, we participate in beauty becoming visible. When we call forth someone's intelligence, their creativity, their compassion, or their resilience, when we see it and we name it and we honor it, we are not just being really nice in a social situation. We are doing recognition work. We are doing spiritual work. We are seeing through the surface to the spiritual essence and naming what we see. In the Kabbalah, there's a beautiful concept that words have the power to reveal or conceal the divine spark within something. The right word at the right moment doesn't create the light, it reveals the light that was always there. And that's what genuine praise does. It doesn't manufacture, it's revealing. We call forth, we make it visible. This is not positive thinking, because positive thinking can get toxic. And at its worst, by the way, it's just denial with better lighting. We want to go deeper than that. We're talking about recognition. Ernest Holmes called it beholding the Christ. So here's a practical invitation and some homework for you. And I want to be specific because spiritual practices that are too general tend to evaporate by Tuesday. And I'd like to see you all do this at least through Thursday or Friday. For 1 week, just 1 week, I want you to try something. Spend this week intentionally looking for what is working. What is working? Not what's wrong, not what still needs fixing, but what is working. Some of you are going to have to look really hard. Look for what is beautiful, not perfect, beautiful. Look for what is emerging, not what has arrived and not what's fully formed, but what is trying to come through. And praise more than you criticize. This is the one that's going to be interesting for me. Not because criticism is always wrong, but because you want to discover the changes, what changes when you shift that ratio to more praise than criticism. Notice what happens, not to the world, but to you. Consciousness changes first, always. The outer follows the inner. That's not wishful thinking. That's Science of Mind 101. So I honor and I recognize that we precious, beautiful, amazing humans, spiritual humans, carry a lot of burdens. I get that. Our circumstances can be, and they feel really heavy. Health, finances, relationships, our histories, so many things we tend to identify as the weight in our lives, right? But I think the greatest burden that many of us carry, and it's the one we can actually do something about, are judgments. Our judgments. And what it might look like for you is the endless internal commentary. The verdicts we render on the people we love, the verdicts we render on the strangers we see, and mostly it's the verdicts that we render quietly, relentlessly on ourselves. We have labels. we have certainties, we have outrage. We keep score about who is up, who is down, and then where we fall in the rankings, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it's heavy. That's a lot of baggage. I mean, if you want to keep doing it, just at least put it in something small like a carry-on, okay? So, because or at least check that bag, so you don't have to carry it. It's so very heavy. You don't have to carry that suitcase anymore. You can put it down. That's what I'm going to be doing this week. Not because it's easy, and not because the judgments don't feel true. Maybe the criticism is warranted, but the weight of that is costing us something far more precious than the satisfaction of being right. The satisfaction of being right. The weight of judgment is costing you the lightness that is your birthright. It's costing me the openness through which grace moves. It costs us the vision that sees possibility where habit only sees limitation. Does that make sense? So my vision for this community is that we honor the journey, our own and each other's. We are in the middle of Pride Month right now. And that's important to us. It's very important. It's a month to consciously honor and to shift our participation in the collective ideas of limitation, of judgment, of fear. We are also a couple days away from the anniversary of Juneteenth. That day in 1865, when Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, to announce that the last of the enslaved people in the United States were free. Now, Emancipation Proclamation happened in 1863. But for 2 years more, slavery was still going on. The enslavement continued. Freedom takes nothing from anyone. And it's the truth that resides in our soul. It is in the heart of every human being. Freedom means that we work to dissolve both the inner limitations and the outer. We do that together. We do that to dissolve the bondage. Now, do we have a lot of work to do? Oh, you bet we do. And we must do it with a kind of conviction and dedication that says, until all are free, no one is free. So when I anchor in healing and in wholeness and in the intention of full freedom, I must do so with a suitcase that isn't filled to overflowing with anger, resentment, or my own self-condemnation. And I am fully willing to do that. Are you willing to do that? Yes. Let's say it again. Are you willing to do that? Yes. Okay, so I know I have unpacking to do. I really do. And it's easy for me to keep score, to judge those who aren't living up to my standards and my values and my judgments, or my ideas of freedom, peace, compassion, equity. But in this community, in my own life, I know that I must die daily to old ideas and judgments. Death brings resurrection. Death always brings resurrection. I want to die daily to those judgments so I can be available to truth. Available to hope, love, and possibility. For that truth that is at the center of my being, at your being, at all life, one mind, one presence, not divided, not diminished, not ranked, not competing. The one expressing through all of us. Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's incredibly messy. That's good because birth is emerging. And it comes through in ways that sometimes are hard to recognize as divine. Oh my God, sometimes really hard to recognize as divine. But all of it is carrying within it the seed of something more. The seed of something more. Spiritual vision sees that seed. We see that something more. And we rise, not by keeping, or pushing others down or denying the seed. We rise by being that seed, by being freedom itself. So may we be people of spiritual vision. May we put down what we no longer need to carry, and may we travel light as the light. And so it is. Let's pray. Thank you. So we turn within once more, recognizing that there is the one power, the one presence, and we all come from that. We are all that. We are an expression, and we say yes to that, knowing that it's not this idea of our Father who art in heaven, but it is our Father, that truth, that source, which is within us, surrounds us and filling us at all times, because love is everywhere equally present. Wisdom is everywhere equally present. God, this source, this light, this universal mind, this intelligence, that is what we say yes to. We say with a divine, profound, dedicated, open yes. And so we know that in that yes is a blessing. It is a blessing of this church. It is a blessing for ourselves. It is a blessing for all churches, for all people everywhere, for all spiritual paths, for all mosques, all temples, ashrams, synagogues, cathedrals, wherever people gather. We know that the light shines brighter, and we are blessed by it. So we stand in that. We are convicted by it, and we agree that we are here to be that freedom, to be that light, and to hold that light. And so with a full and grateful heart, I release this word into the activity of the law, knowing it is so. And together we say, amen.